Hey friends, my name's Georgie. Such a warm welcome to the Just Breathe podcast, where I'll be talking all things breathing to help empower you guys to use the power of your breath to harness your bodies and minds. In today's powerful conversation, I'll be chatting all things singing with Miss Bryony Purdue. Bryony is an internationally renowned singer, songwriter, actor, and voiceover artist. And we got chatting all about Bryony's journey through her operatic training, as well as through the rest of her singing career. We talked about the importance of breathing when it comes to singing and how singing always starts with the breath, as well as the healing power of singing when it comes to dealing with mental health issues, as well as treating long COVID. Yes, the English National Opera is partnering with hospitals to help to treat long COVID using breathing exercises that are used in operatic training. And we got chatting all about that and the brilliance of it in today's episode. I really hope you enjoy it. If you haven't already, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the Just Breathe podcast. Let's keep on building that strong breathing community. Connection is so important now more than ever, and I cannot think of a better way to connect each other than through the breath. Breathing is the most universal language on the planet, so let's keep spreading the word of just how powerful it can be. So without further ado, let's jump right in to today's powerful conversation. I'm so excited for you to hear this one. This is episode 21 of Just Breathe with Bryony Purdue. Hey Bryony, what's up? How you doing?
Hi Georgie, yeah, all good, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. It's so cool to have you on the Just Breathe podcast. Welcome.
Thank you. It's lovely to see you and following our chat already before. It's lovely to actually develop on it.
I know. You were actually one of the first people I interviewed when I had my mere Facebook group that I had no idea would turn into a podcast. So
you've moved on to bigger and brighter podcast things.
Yes, exactly. So you are an honorary guest and part of the original clan, which is cool. But I do definitely want to jump right in and get on to your story and your journey, which I already know is fascinating. But for everyone listening, I'm sure they are dying to hear your journey with singing and many other things that have a lot to do with the breath. So take it away, please.
Right. So we'll start chronologically. Right. So how many ways can you preface a beginning?
Exactly.
I am a singer. I am an actor. I am a voiceover artist. I run public speaking workshops, and all of that obviously links into the breath. And
Nice.
I studied opera at Trinity. I'd come from growing up in Scotland with folk music and then came down to England and loved languages, and opera made sense. And by some miraculous, I wouldn't say fluke, I say I worked really hard, but only for a year. But by some miraculous thing, I did actually get into the course. 4 years at Trinity. I've not left Greenwich yet. I'm still here.
Wow.
And I graduated like 4 years ago. And all inspired by this wonderful teacher who heard me sing and said, "You're really good." And it took her 7 years for me to believe her.
So British.
Yeah, I know. And I'd always done it for pleasure. I'd always sung for my own self-soothing, and we'll talk more about that and the effect that it has on ourself. But the main breakthrough that I had was actually before I went to Trinity, I had a consultation lesson with a classical singing tutor in my sort of year of preparation to audition. And in that lesson, we had this amazing set of unvoiced warm-ups. So you think you go into singing and you go, E-A-R, 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 but that doesn't wake up the muscles first. I mean, you wouldn't go into a warm-up going straight to the weights. You
Right.
start with a non-voiced warm-up. Completely alien to me.
Yeah.
Completely interested in what it sort of meant. And these are warm-ups based on a woman who was an opera singer who lost her voice entirely in a house fire because of smoke damage.
Wow.
I know, and she was told by doctors that, this is permanent damage. Your vocal folds are scarred. It's going to be really hard for you to get back to speaking, let alone singing.
Right. So you're done, they
Yeah.
told her, essentially.
Yeah.
Right.
So she said, no, that's not good enough. I know that there are speech therapists. I know that there are ways around this. So she developed her own way of sort of training her muscles, the singing, speaking muscles back before trying to approach this, because this was so delicate and it was so damaged. So she started some percussive exercises which involve slowing down, expelling all of your air, expanding your rib cage, and then letting air sort of flood in. And
Right.
your lungs become a sort of vacuum if you do that. You expel, expand the space just muscularly without taking any air in. And it fills you from the bottom all the way to the top, instead of just piling more on this little bit here, which is, I think, when you're panicking, or I think that area, you go, it doesn't get any further down. This is like liquid all the way to the bottom. I know we're talking about air, but it's like liquid when you do that.
No. But I think people also get misconstrued when you say the word singing and even speaking, that it's only to do with the throat and the lips and anything where you believe as humans that sound comes out. But actually, when you're speaking of singing or speaking muscles, they're actually very far away from your throat, a lot of them, aren't they?
Massively so. I mean, you use, if you're with opera and the training that I did there, fascinating how much you use your quads.
Right. Wow.
For extra strength. When you go high, you go low. So you don't see opera singers doing a squat when they go to a high note on stage, but you do in rehearsals.
Right.
You literally do. And it's absolutely fascinating. And my sort of expectations of singing, when I'd not had lessons for a couple of years but started to retrain to audition for opera, were completely flipped on their head. And then I went to music college, and I had a teacher who I loved but wasn't the right teacher for me technically, on technique.
Right.
So really wonderful person, but really was using the same language each time and I wasn't feeling any development. So I changed teacher, and that was a teacher who completely based everything in yoga, in physicality, in breath, and it completely took me back to that amazing experience before going to Trinity, of how you can unlock this amazing strength by muscle control and not relying on all of this here. I've been singing for about 7 hours today, and actually I think you can hear my larynx sounds quite high, but I don't sound like knackered or tired. It just sounds, that's a long time to be singing, and
it just worked.
and it's all because it's based now in muscle, not just in throat. You don't sing, like you say, it's such a small part of it here, and this is so delicate. Your muscles aren't really that delicate. They are strong. They're so good. You can develop those, you can work those out. They can get bigger, better, stronger, and faster, and more agile, and all of those things. This can't. This is what it is.
That's incredible. So what you're talking about is that you learnt an embodied practice of singing. Is that what you're speaking of?
Exactly that.
Right.
Exactly that. And in turn, I have had some vocal problems myself. So the first 2 years I was talking about there, I really struggled with some post-nasal drip. So I had infections going from my ears to my nose and back again. Because we didn't realise there was actually a problem with my left sinus, and my adenoids were a problem. So you've got like tonsils, but you've also got sort of tonsils of the nose, your adenoids. So I had to get surgery on that, and that got sort of sorted. And the next 2 days after that, bearing in mind I'd managed to do 3 years of an opera degree with completely the wrong equipment, because it was damaged and swollen by
blocking
this post-nasal drip. Exactly. So I'd managed to do 3 years of an opera degree doing that. And then 2 days after I had this surgery, it was bizarre how quickly it bounced back. Because I'd been singing muscularly, it wasn't damaged from what I was doing with it. because of
Yeah.
this wonderful teacher who I'm pretty much in lifelong debt, because it could have been a very different story.
Yeah.
So I felt cold air in the left-hand side of my inner face for the first time, which was so strange. It went, I
Wow.
really felt it was cold in here.
Yeah.
And I took it in and I felt like there were two channels of air coming in instead of just the one. And I started
Wow.
singing, and my chords met, and they kept meeting, and they kept doing that instead of, which is what they
Yeah.
were doing before. And I had the voice I knew I'd always had.
Yeah.
But I had it for the first time through a combination of not having battered it by using the muscular approach, and having this nasal surgery. So it's all, and that also then meant that all of the anxiety and fear I had surrounding this problem I knew existed and didn't know why,
Yeah.
that really, I'm really grateful that really quickly evaporated too.
Yeah, do you know what I was actually just going to say is that what I love about your story and every way that you refer to music and singing is how relaxed you sound when you are talking about singing, because to many people singing is a very vulnerable and scary thing and comes with a lot of fear and anxiety, which I'm sure you work to especially combat when you're helping people with public speaking as well. It's not just singing.
Oh, yes.
Any form of voicing can be very vulnerable, because you are almost showing a part of yourself, and putting yourself in the firing line, I suppose, for judgment and criticism. That's the first thing that comes to my mind for where the fear comes from. But
Mm.
it's sort of a mystery, isn't it? The anxiety that comes with performing. It's that paradox of it makes you feel so alive and present in your storytelling, but at the same time it can be suffocatingly anxiety inducing. And as someone who's performed myself, I'd say I've definitely experienced both,
Yeah.
on both ends of the spectrum, of being so in it that I have no idea what is going on outside of me, nor do I care, because I'm just so there. And then other times where I've literally sounded like a sheep, because we've all had
I'm
the sheep.
sure that's not true.
We've all had the sheep experience where your body is so tight that you're like, and it's awful.
You know what though? This is a podcast about breath, but it's really funny because that is, whenever anyone comes to me, adult pupils particularly, who are often actors, because I do specifically do like 6 lessons for actors who are actor dancers. So if you want to be the triple threat, but you feel really comfortable in your acting, your dancing ability, that, like I am with my acting and my singing ability, I go and do dance lessons to sort of try and make sure that if I do ever get in the room, I can actually do it.
Yes.
But the first thing I say about that nervousness with singing is that I was outside in a hallway of an audition, and this is about 2.5 years ago. And I just got a new agent, and I loved her, and I really wanted her to think I'd done really well.
Yeah.
And I am exactly like when you like,
like me.
Yes, love me. I'm going to get you loads of work.
Yeah.
And then a pandemic happened.
Yeah.
But I really wanted to do well because I respected and liked her so much, and I was finally in the room for things that. And I'm not I don't expect things to happen to me, but in a room, I felt I belonged.
Yeah.
More than the sort of lower level auditions I had been doing. I've been working for a while. So I really wanted to up the level. And I felt, finally, I'm here. And in the hallway outside, I went, oh God.
Yeah.
And I couldn't calm it. And I got hot and red and panicky and sweaty and all the awful things that make it completely impossible to do well. So I went back to the first exercise, which that lady gave me, about the woman who was in the fire that she gave us. And it is to expel all of your air really slowly and really steadily. Really make sure you do it. Really go.
From your mouth.
From your mouth. Well,
or does it matter?
It doesn't matter. Right. So she'd use the mouth so that you could hear it, so that you understood which step you were on. So expel all. Gone. To, like, you think you're out, you're not out. You've got more.
Right.
Really go. And then expand your rib, your intercostal muscles, your ribs there, without taking any air in. And then let the air come in that amazing rush. That's fabulous. That's great. And then blow condensation blow a breath as though it's condensation on a window. So that noise for as long as you can. And then you get to the end of that breath and you begin that process of expand and fill in again. I did 3 of those. I walked in and went, hello, my name's Bryony, lovely to meet you. Instead of 40 seconds before, 45 seconds before, I would have gone in and I absolutely would have completely wrecked it.
Bottled it. Yeah.
Absolutely bottled it. Yeah. So
and
that's
amazing.
Breath.
Yeah, and that makes perfect sense, because you are slowing down the breath, and regardless of whether you're breathing through your nose or your mouth. And I know I go on a lot about breathing in and out through the nose, etc., for a number of reasons of losing moisture and things. But the thing is, and that I've learned the more I go along my breathing journey, and by the way, I will not be a breath master until I've studied breath for at least 10 years. Until then, I consider myself a complete beginner. Always. So
same with singing. You just
exactly.
can't.
I will always be a beginner until I've passed that 10 years of practice, I've got to say. But for what I've learned so far, and I learn more and more.
I'm not a practicing witch, by the way. I'm sorry. I just realised, for anyone watching this, I'm not a witch.
For anyone listening, Bryony has a white witch teacup, which she is mysteriously sipping from. As
sorry, I cut straight across you.
No, you are fine. But slowing the breath and breathing out through the mouth is perfectly fine in intermittent stages. My big point is that for habitual everyday breathing, for the other 23 hours of the day, breathing in and out through the nose is really advantageous, just because it is made for breathing. Filters, moistens, humidifies the air, etc. But for that calming breath, especially where you need to focus on your breath, that intently, because you're so damn anxious, actually, I think being able to hear your breath, like the ujjayi breath in pranayama,
it's exactly that. It's exactly
you can
that.
hear it. It can be quite soothing, because it can almost quieten the chatter in your mind, because you can just hear that condensation-y sort of noise of and you're just listening and calming, and that purely slowing of the breath. It makes sense. It's going to stimulate your vagus nerve. It's going to bring you into a parasympathetic state, and you can respond. If I knew this 5 years ago, I would have done considerably better in half of the auditions, I previously did. And I feel so lucky I know it now, but which is why I think both of us feel so passionate to pass it on to other people, in that, no, it's so simple. You can bring yourself back. And something else which sort of caught my attention about what you said is actually brought me to a book I've been reading called Inner Excellence, and it's makes an amazing point about a focus on the goal rather than the journey, and that actually focusing on the goal and the outcome whilst you're in an experience is anxiety, panic inducing. The more you focus on I want that part, and start to think about that, what that part will entail, getting that part, impressing the people behind the table, you completely forget about the journey you're actually on, which is that you're getting the privilege to stand with a pianist and sing live and tell a story.
And there's also the thing that no anxiety is based in now.
No.
None.
No.
There is none. There is no anxiety about what's happening right now.
Exactly.
Even just tomorrow. Something about it. I'm not doing anything particularly scary tomorrow. There is something slightly more anxiety inducing just because it's tomorrow.
Because you don't know what's going to happen.
But we don't know what's going to happen in the next 5 minutes, and I'm not nervous about that. It's fascinating.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It is, and I really don't understand why it's not taught more in performing schools, mindfulness, breathwork, because if I was taught these really simple tools of just being present, they talk about presence a lot in the performing arts, but they label it as stage presence, and then suddenly you only associate being present with being on stage, whereas actually if you can practice being present in everyday life, then being on stage is just a natural progression to that. And you're right that anxiety always lies in the future or in reflecting on the past. And so if you're in an audition and that anxiety comes over you, it's never your fault, but just an awareness that, oh, I'm not present right now. How do I get present? Right back in flow, and then you ace it every time. It's just a harnessing of your own abilities, isn't it? And so
the lovely thing about auditions is that the people that are opposite you on a panel, they aren't there to judge you at your worst.
No.
They want you to be the person that gets the job, because then they're satisfied that they've done their job to the best of their ability, and they want to see you succeed. They're not against you, they're with you. And I had a lovely piece of advice from a friend who is a West End legend. She's brilliant. She said, walk into an audition room like you've got the job.
Yeah.
It's not arrogance, it's just comfort. You exist,
Yeah.
you belong there.
Yeah.
And then walk out of it like you'll never hear about it again.
No.
That's harder to do, but it's also, it's since that, it really has, the breathing exercise, walking in like you've got the job and leaving like you'll never hear back, and just remembering that they are on your side, are three of the most important things, which I heard after I'd been professionally auditioning for a year.
Yeah. Yeah. And I went to theatre school when I was 16, professional theatre school, full time. And if I was running that school, it would be the first thing I sit those students down and I say, here's the 3 key fundamentals. And it does not matter how talented you are, because that covers everything. Because at the end of the day, I mean, what it is, isn't it, is that if you put your attention on something that is outside of your control, it will induce severe anxiety. All you can harness is what is in your control, which is your breath, your voice, and your presence to now. The rest really is irrelevant, but we put so much of our focus on it. I even wonder if that's got a lot to do with bringing us back into the present now, with a lot of the mental health crisis going on right now, is that people have lost that prediction of the future. No one knows what's coming next.
Absolutely. Hugely so.
Yeah.
Hugely so. And I think that the first lockdown, lots of people, except those with kids, which every lockdown has just been really difficult.
Of course.
But people without kids, lots of people on the first one said, oh, this is an opportunity to slow down, to catch up on the things that I wanted to do, to upskill, to do various things, to, to put together that chest of drawers I've been meaning to do, all that sort of thing. And lots of people loved that. I heard lots of positivity around the first lockdown, and lots of people came to me for singing lessons in the first lockdown.
Yeah. I bet. Even non-performers, I suppose.
Yes. Yeah. Amazing. Massively so. Yeah. People who'd wanted to do this for years,
Of course. Amazing. Yeah.
And it's interesting because as time has gone on and as the parameters for expectations have stayed as elastic and far away as they felt like they were in the first one, we thought that there kind of be answers, but there aren't. And I'm not pretending that I'm fine all the time, because it's really hard.
Yeah.
But generally, you can, if you have this outlet, for me it's singing, and that again being an extension of breathing and meditation, because when I am recording, I am genuinely 6 hours later, I go, oh, I forgot to eat.
Yeah.
It's a flow state, it's a meditation, it's a whole thing. Feel so lucky to have it, because without it, I keep trying to give people lessons, like without talking about, some people I'm giving lessons free, some people I'm giving lessons for less than I normally would, because it's got to be something which everyone can be involved in, because it just is so valuable. It's so valuable to your...
And this was my next question, is performer or non-performer, have you found from people simply utilizing their voice, using their voice, which of course, even in any singing exercise, whether you are humming, humming bee breath is literally a pranayama exercise, but whether you're humming or singing, generally you are elongating your exhale if you are singing, which again is going to really bring a calming effect. So have you seen an influence on people's mental health from having singing lessons with you?
Enormously so.
Wow.
Enormously so. And it's interesting because I think that is a combination of their expectation of themselves being quite low, and them doing significantly more in a shorter space of time than they were expecting, because it's not in my interest to hold back the key information, the useful stuff.
Yeah.
I don't want someone who's come to me for specifically 6 lessons to go away from those 6 lessons feeling like they need to come back for a year more.
Yeah.
If they've come in for 6 lessons, they've come in for 6 lessons, they need all of the information in 6 lessons.
Yeah.
And that tends to be for actors and dancers, because they've got an understanding of, what their goal is with it.
Yeah.
So and the way that people use their voice, and lots of the actors and dancers come away saying, I did a self-tape and I was speaking and I knew my voice was exactly where I needed it to be.
Yeah.
Because of the breath work that we've done on singing, it's feeding into their speaking.
Yeah.
And in
And
fact,
dancing, no doubt.
massively so. And in fact, one of my actor pupils stopped getting speech lessons because they weren't working as well as the singing was for their speech.
Yeah.
Because it's breath, it's that elongation of thing, and the understanding that vowels are our communication tool. They are the way that we get things out, and humming is a sort of just a closed connection.
Yeah.
And it's completely safe and calming and lovely. And the warm-ups that we do vary from just the physical ones to, you know, hums to E, A, R, and the resistance difference in all of those is fascinating. I really could go on. I won't.
No, I think it's so incredibly relevant. And I mean, the only thing we've left out actually is that just the pure joy of music, which I
Mm-hmm.
think is slowly being recognized of actually how vital it is. And I mean, surely it's a no-brainer because music in some form has been around for thousands of years.
Mm-hmm.
So of course it's incredibly important. If it wasn't important, it would have died out by now. But it is so important as a communication tool, as a tool now more than ever for mental health. We now have the studies to prove it as well. And I don't know, man, that joy of music, I think whatever music you're listening to is more important than ever right
It
now.
also, the fact that you can listen to, this is a sort of another way of using music, the fact that you can listen to a really great thrash metal track or a rock track or whatever and feel that rising of pent up frustration and anger and it dissipate without having to do anything vicious or unpleasant is magical. It just goes to show the potency of it. And babies in the womb kick around and move to beats and hear music and respond. It's a completely innate ancient part of us. And we have really got caught up in the dare I say it, kind of superfluous daily stuff of a rat race modern world.
I agree.
And if more people got back to singing or breath, I think singing is a really good way into it because you can sort of hear the results.
Yeah.
It never ceases to amaze me because it's my most natural setting is to be singing or to be talking about singing or to be doing something to do with it or recording. And it ceases to amaze me how joyful other people are when what do you do? I'm a singer. Oh my gosh, I'd love to be able to sing. No one's ever not said that. Ever. And you know, it's never a cool.
Right.
You know, it's really, really great and it's really lovely. So it's clear how much of a therapeutic effect it can have on people. Music therapy is a huge thing. It's a really big deal.
Massively. And you know, I think we disregard why singing and music is so therapeutic. Why? Because to take a moment to have a sing, to take a moment to have a boogie in your kitchen, or to really listen to some music generally. And even if you're listening while you're driving, you have to stop in some way. You have to take a moment to stop the chatter and the nonsense of the repetitive thoughts circling around your mind and put your attention onto something a bit less serious, a bit more therapeutic, and something that usually has a story that moves you to allow yourself to be moved emotionally by something rather than getting so caught up in the chatter. And, you know, this is why I would say I do owe my life as it is now to breath work, because it's how I found space. And prior to that, I think singing was the one thing that led me to the breath work. And I didn't realize how much space singing found me, but I got into a loop where singing became quite anxiety inducing because I put an expectation on myself that singing meant a certain proving of myself. And I've spent the last 2 years undoing that. And now my voice is better than ever because it's just not so serious anymore.
That's magic.
It's
and it takes time as well. It does. The chatter thing is absolutely brilliant, what you said there. And it's really, there is a book called The Untethered Soul by Michael A. Singer.
I love that book. Yes,
it's incredible.
I've read it.
So the first chapter where it talks about the narrative voice inside our heads, which is a character reference for our environment. So it's going, there's a lamp over there, I'm not sure I like that very much. And then the carpet, I need to hoover that. You know, it's constantly doing that. To be able to sing, and whilst you're singing or listening to music, to quiet that chatter means that there is an absence of a space, a complete being present, and it all comes back to being present. And the chatter is quite often really unhelpful.
Completely unhelpful.
And you wouldn't talk
Useless.
to anyone else like you talk to yourself.
No, you would not. You absolutely would not.
Yeah.
And the fact that music can literally transport you, I think, is fascinating as well. You know, like I was telling you earlier, I was listening to Scottish folk music, and number one, it nearly moved me to tears. But I, close my eyes for 2 minutes and I'm on top of a mountain looking over the Scottish Highlands, sort of like wind in my hair. Of course, I'm wearing some sort of kilt, or we don't need to know the details.
Boudica.
It was but it was fantastic. And, I felt serene and powerful in the space of 30 seconds. And, the interesting thing that you said as well about that space is, the subconscious mind does not know the difference, right, between something we're experiencing in real life and something we are imagining. The nervous system reacts in exactly the same way, which actually brings us back to what you said right at the beginning in terms of your brilliant teacher of an embodied singing practice, which actually I think is the only way to sing. But
100%.
also everyone for their own preference is perfectly valid, of course. But I completely agree, and it's scientifically, physiologically makes sense, because the nervous system responds whether you are imagining a scenario, whether you're worrying about an audition, or whether you're actually in that audition itself. Your body will live it, which is why when you have an argument and you walk away and you keep replaying it in your mind, you're actually going through the argument physically again and again and again. And if you actually can allow yourself to let go of it and listen to some music, find that space, sing, find that space, the therapeuticness of it, I think, is actually very much not even fully understood yet by the world of science. I think there's a long way to go with it, but it's massive.
And that's our forefathers, our ancient ancestors.
Yeah.
They knew, and they didn't. I think it's one of the. There's a great line in a song I've been recording today from a Barbra Streisand track from Yentl.
Oh,
the more we learn, the more we realise, the less we know.
Yeah.
And that are, ancient ritualistic singing and breathwork and that sound. It's just invigorating, and it's togetherness, and
it is.
It's nature. It's our very, very nature.
What do you do, right, at the end of like a really long run or some strenuous activity that you've never done before? You go,
yeah,
it's exactly the same, right? Yeah. If you extend that, you're going, and you've got a note, and it's
you're singing. Actually, anyone listening, if you enjoy singing, if you know singing, if you do singing, or if you don't, next time you do a workout, sing beforehand, do your workout, and then sing afterwards, see what happens. It's very interesting, because your cardiovascular system is awake, and it goes, this is flooded with blood, and its blood flow is going, and this is all ready and prepared and agile and warmed up and ready. And actually, if I'm ever going to record anything big, a big belter, I'll always warm up vocally, whether it's big or small or whatever. Yeah. Physically, if I want to really get into it, always I'll do something really intensely high activity, high intensity.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
God, brilliant. Oh,
it's only that makes me move. The rest of it.
It's the only reason I exercise.
Yeah,
love it. Well, I think honestly this is the perfect time to move on. We talked a little bit about COVID, but I know before we recorded we were discussing the article, how now singing, specifically opera exercises as such, similar to the ones you've already described, are actually being used to treat patients with long COVID that are experiencing horrific anxiety, fatigue, low energy, and severe breathlessness to the point of feeling suffocated, which I can imagine is just unbearable. But I think it's amazing, actually, that the English National Opera has got involved in hospitals. I mean, this must be, well, actually, it's not the first time, because I heard of a study with a singing teacher treating patients with emphysema.
That makes sense.
Yeah, a long time ago. But like, obviously, we had a browse through the article before we recorded this. But what do you make of it all? I think it's bloody brilliant, personally.
I think it's really interesting that, firstly, the opera training is a very interesting one because it comes with an enormous number of caveats and snobbery. And
yes.
therefore, I would say, if you get the right teacher and the right person who is willing to treat it as an embodied and personal experience, not you must sound like every other mezzo or soprano or whatever your voice type is, you really have to go for someone who really understands your approach to it and cultivates that and makes it new to you each time. They are few and far between because it takes a really remarkable person to do that. So opera being the sort of most westernized, least ritualistic, visceral, it can be one of the least visceral sounding sounds because it's so pure, technical and beautiful and high, which isn't the most natural way for us to express. But what it does do is it focuses on an entirely muscular approach to singing. So you can't sing without using your muscles really, but you can get away with it for a while with sort of rock and pop,
right?
Without going, expel, fill in, because the lines aren't written in the same long extension kind of way. It's exactly what you were saying. They're not written in that same way. There isn't as much versatility of height and depth. There isn't as much of a focus on following a score, which tells you need to go louder here, you need to be quieter here. There isn't singing to get to the back of an auditorium in pop. It's a very different thing. So I think it's brilliant that it's opera training,
specifically opera,
that is doing that, because it completely comes from this place of muscle trying to help that which is weakened. So you're with the effects of long COVID, my understanding is the breathlessness. I mean, it must be so awful, because if you're breathless, you're more anxious, and if you're more anxious, you're more breathless, and it's just a horrible vicious cycle.
Exactly.
So I think that any sort of opera exercises that put you into that light head voice, and part of the and I say light head voice and people are going to go, what, opera, light head voice? All warm-ups are
tiny.
You want to get into that focus and make it really delicate, and then you can expand and fill in that sound. But it's all about muscle and focus.
Less is more, right?
Oh yes. And that tiny sound can somehow get to the back of an auditorium. It's fascinating. The resonance is just there if you've trained on it and you've worked it out. So using and learning about people that aren't necessarily singers, using and learning about the spaces that resonate, how to send air there so that you are relying on your muscles, which can develop, which can be built, which can become more agile, and not resting on damaged lungs, hurt lungs, and tired vocal cords, which they will be if they've been coughing a lot and if they've been breathing raggedly, they'll be tired. So it gives everything a chance for recovery and repair. And I can't quite get my head around how much more a brilliant idea that is than immediately going and reaching for a drug treatment or a medical therapy. Go try, unless there is a clear treatment, which they know is the only way for that to work, that's medical or drug based. It'd be wonderful if there was more access to voice training and breath training, because your lungs are breath. You can't put a pill in your lungs. You can't fix it that way.
Any medication in general, you will take for a certain amount of time, but unless you're going to take it for your entire life, which usually there's some adverse effects on the body because you are putting something external in your body. You are,
and resistance.
Yes, exactly. So you are sort of disturbing your body's natural state, even because sometimes I suppose that drug is there to try and restore some balance, but it's always an outside drug. I'm not a doctor, of course, but an outside drug, to my knowledge of what I know so far, is always going to disturb something in the body because it targets something specifically. Breath work, singing targets the entire body, the entire mind, because everything is working in conjunction. And when you slow the breath, you improve blood flow. When you engage your muscles, you are improving your cardiovascular system. When you are even just humming, slowing the breath, producing sound, you're balancing your nervous, everything's working together. Whereas, even I've been reading a lot even about drugs for depression and different things, and they sort of numb a certain part of your brain. It's specific and it's blah, blah, blah with everything else. So I think doing something that is natural and that it has a longevity, you're not going to have any ill consequences from singing for the rest of your life.
No, and it chemically, singing and music therapy it releases all the good hormones and all of the good chemicals, and then your body gets better at producing them for itself, and then there's nothing being suppressed but instead elevated. Nothing is. I completely agree. Like it's I mean, what could be more natural than taking breath in? I just think the using, and also it's exciting for people that don't normally sing to get taught by people from the ENO.
Yes.
That's so thrilling. That's a life event. That's so cool.
Yeah, but it's bridging. Also, like, I love what you said about bridging the gap, because Bill the Builder would probably laugh if you said, oh, we've got someone from the English National Opera. And I'm sure there's been so many sentences of that's for posh people, that's for this, because there's been this stereotype that opera is for the upper class, which of course way back when it was, which it was associated very much with the upper class, especially in Britain. Whereas now we hope we're working towards a world that is much more equal and
working towards
is the right word. But actually bridging that gap just a little bit more, where it's like, no, forget that it's opera, forget that it's associated with all these things that don't really matter. It's just singing. It's just the singing. It's just the joy of music and the joy of singing. And I love that they're using lullabies, don't you? I think that's brilliant.
It's really, really funny. We were just reading it just before we sort of started here. It's really funny because with the warm-ups, I was sort of describing and keeping it in that light focus. That the way to do that, the quickest way to do that and describe that to someone is, how would you sing a lullaby? You can't go, make sure that you're that your larynx isn't closing too your muscles, no, sing it like it's a lullaby. And the other thing that comes with that is a level of meditation and expression of intent to soothe. So you also then you go, stopping, and you lullaby yourself.
You do, yeah. But because what a lullaby is associated with children and babies and nighttime and sleep, and so it's so soothing. And like you said, it is yes, we have coronavirus, but I think there's an epidemic and pandemic itself in terms of the overstimulation of the Western world and the fact that we've just all forgotten our roots in terms of that storytelling, that singing, community, bringing people together by just sharing a really simple joy without anyone having to get anything or be anything. I think that's really important.
I think also if anyone who is listening has never sung in a choir, just bear with me here. I'm not suggesting that you go and try and join a really competitive professional choir. There is something about singing with other people that is truly unbelievable. And there was a study done a few years ago where professional choir who sing together all the time, Genesis 16, their heart rates were measured and their heart rates sync when they sing together. And they've been doing it, they do it regularly together, so you'd think there was a familiarity thing there. Not the case. A bunch of strangers who are not singers then got brought in, heart rates measured, and their heart rates, they sync and they relax and they soothe. And even if it's faster, more joyful music, it's still steady. Your heart rate does something steady and meaningful instead of flippant and a bit confused. Our bodies know what they need to do, and when it comes to singing, all a teacher should do is remind you of your nature, not teach you anything new.
Yes. Well, it's a coming back, isn't it? And that's the something I talk about in breath work when I'm teaching a lot as well, is we're not looking to find anything. We are coming back to everything you already have, but that has got muffled and lost by everything society has conditioned you to be, which is not necessarily natural or necessary, if I may say so. it's a story that everyone has sort of been conditioned to believe, that actually now the world's been tipped upside down, we're having to step back and go, oh,
Yeah.
maybe I don't need to do or be all these things.
Do you recommend lying down a lot in your breath work?
Yeah, especially, well, it depends, because breathwork can be used for three main things, which I talk about, which is awareness, regulation, and transformation.
Mm-hmm.
So, that includes a down regulator and an up regulator. Now, if you're doing a down regulator, meaning to calm down, lying down is amazing, because number one, it really allows you to just melt into the floor. Everything can actually relax, a bit like the Alexander technique. If any performers listening, I'm sure you'll know about it. Really just melting and relaxing into the floor, and you can actually feel your expansion against the floor, which is great. And I find that if you're lying flat on a hard floor, everything's in alignment. I don't know if you find that in singing as well. Everything's sort of forced into alignment. And if someone has particularly bad posture, it can feel really weird.
Yes, and they can feel really far forward or really far back. They can feel like,
and they're actually just lying down. Whereas if we're doing an up regulator, something that's supposed to be a bit more energizing or for focus, I tend to have people sitting up, or sometimes doing a standing meditation if they can achieve relaxation while standing, which is very hard for a lot of people to do. It takes time. But just because I would say it takes a couple years of meditating before you find the place where you don't fall asleep. A lot of people sort of nod off in a meditation, which is great because it means you have relaxed. But there is definitely a point in meditation where it's not supposed to send you asleep. You're actually supposed to be calm and focused, which is why they now use box breathing and things in the military. Calm and focused, but totally ready to respond in any moment. But the point is that your response is very calm and very coherent. So that was a long-winded answer.
No, it's brilliant. It's perfect sense, because if someone's really struggling to hit a particular note, and it's often when it's high stuff.
Yeah.
I sort of said earlier, when you go high, go low.
Yeah.
If they're struggling, lie them down on the floor, and it will just come out. And that, again, being reminded of your nature. If people come to me and they want to sing and they go, oh, but I'm built quite small, so I'm not going to make a big sound. And you go, babies. Tell me babies don't make a big sound.
Yeah.
Because that's resonance. They've not been taught yet the bad habits of sitting at a computer, of driving in a car and slouching, and they're lying down.
Yes, no, it makes perfect sense. And I was just going to say, actually, as well, in terms of any sort of transformational breathing, and with that, I'm talking about Wim Hof, very famous at the moment, holotropic breathing, transcendental meditation, things where you have these profound experiences, and usually because you're doing quite a really big circular conscious breath, which generally actually decreases oxygen getting to your brain, and so which often actually is why you have these big profound experiences. But in a spiritual sense, it is how you induce that experience. It is by these quite big breaths, and it's quite a big experience. Yeah.
The spiritual thing of spinning around to try, whirling dervishes. It's not a joke.
Yeah.
It's an attempt at the divine. It's an attempt to get closer, because
to connect. Circular breath. Yeah. So always people. I've never seen that practice not lying down, especially with Wim Hof. And I say, anytime I mention Wim Hof, I have to say, I'm not a Wim Hof instructor, but it's so important. Never, ever do Wim Hof in water, please. Anyone ever practicing Wim Hof. Wim Hof, you almost hyperventilate. Not quite, but you are breathing in heavy amounts to the point where you breathe out a lot of carbon dioxide, and it switches off the chemoreceptors in your brain that tell you to breathe, which is why you can hold your breath for 3 minutes as such, when previously you could hold it for 30 seconds. And so, anyone listening that goes and is, oh, what's this Wim Hof thing? Please do it in dry land, lying down. Carry on. So important. But yes, always lying down for any big transcendental crazy experiences,
and that euphoria then as well, you're cushioned in your experience. You are womb-like and childlike. You're not.
Yeah, but the fascinating thing with singing is like I have found I've made the most incredible sounds either sat in sort of a yogi squat,
Yeah.
like really, or even just anywhere really, like sat down, like I'm really chilled out, and then I stand up and I'm like, damn it, and I can't do it, and that making that bridge between doing it. So you must have a really difficult job getting people making this huge noise lying down that they never thought they could make, to then making that journey to standing up.
It's actually a lot easier to explain to women than men, because
Really?
but that's because we have more of an awareness of our pelvic floor and our
Yes.
connection to those muscles, and it
Yes.
actually, all it takes is a tilt normally. But trying to
Really?
explain that to men, they move their hips forward or backwards. That's not
Right.
it's internal.
Stop thrusting, dear.
And male singers, it's interesting. The biology is different.
Yeah.
So you just have to adapt it and explain it slightly differently. And the sort of the tilt is not external.
No.
And it's fascinating because it's such a small thing. You'll know in yoga you can do sort of sit-ups. If you lie on your back, you relax your shoulders down, and then you have your legs at a 90-degree angle. You can then do a sit-up that only moves your legs like that. But it's like, oh
yeah.
And it's amazing. And then you get up and try and sing and you go, oh wow, this is so powerful, this is so easy, this is so muscular, and you can do it for hours. This is the thing, is if it's muscular and if it's based in creating an environment for the breath,
yes,
as opposed to letting the breath push you out, you create an environment for it to come in. If you're then using it, then you can do it for hours. You're going to do yourself no damage. You're not going to bash your cords together and cause any sort of hurt. You're going to be able to do this for hours and hours and hours. Opera singers being a prime example.
Working with your body rather than against it.
Exactly that.
Yeah, and that's that big thing, isn't it? We're so taught in the Western world to push and try, and the more you work, the more you try, the more you push, the more you'll get. And actually, I have now spent years undoing that idea that it's completely the opposite, that the more you relax, the less you do, actually the more you'll get. And it doesn't mean as such being lazy, it's that caring less without being careless, I suppose.
And the middle state where you flow, that's that state where you are entirely relaxed and entirely focused.
Yes, calm but ready, again, in a totally meditative state, and it's completely relevant. And this is why I think singing is so important, and or why I brought you on the podcast, because like you said, when you're singing, you are meditating. You're in a form of meditation. You're in a flow state. Even if you think, when you are even walking around doing the washing up, whistling a tune or humming or singing to the radio, you're not clogged with repetitive thoughts and worrying in that moment. You're away, whatever that phrase, you're away with the fairies, but actually you're in a meditative state where you are calm and just in the flow of life. And I think it's really important, and actually a really untapped area that I think singing, I'm so glad that this has happened with the English National Opera and long COVID, because I think this is just the beginning of singing being integrated as more not just therapeutic for mental disorders, because I know that's already happening, but for actual medical issues. I
Absolutely.
think singing can be used a lot more, and I'm excited.
And there is always a balance to be had. So you can't always use holistic approach to things.
No.
But if there is a way that it can be used first without causing that person any delayed treatment or damage that they could, otherwise do when they needed medical intervention.
Yeah.
If there's any way, always go for that first.
Of course.
Because it can't hurt you.
No. Well, this is the thing. This is the thing as well, is that breath work cannot cure cancer. Breath work, cannot cure these horrific diseases that we're faced with in this day and age. And I would never claim it ever could. But what it can do is make that heart attack, make that stroke a little bit possibly less likely if you actually take the time to look after your health, take autonomy over your own health before any of that stuff gets to that point. And this is something that a alternative medical doctor said to me in a previous episode, amazing thing that I won't forget actually, when he said our health system focuses on the problem, the disease, and not, well, as the NHS should, of course, because they're treating disease, but he more means is our approach to health is about what could go wrong rather than
preventing
what could go right, in terms of why do we always have to get ill to do something about our health? Why aren't we, optimizing our health whilst we're healthy to prevent and maintain? And it baffles me on a daily basis, and this is where the holistic and singing approaches really play their role, but it is a crucial role.
It is, absolutely. And I think it's a huge explanation as to why I am a happy person, why I am a relaxed person, and why I have it's funny, I border on having an excess of energy, but I've always got somewhere to put it. I've always got somewhere to put it, so it doesn't, I hope, doesn't come out at the edges, and and it never comes out as for no one's perfect all the time, but it doesn't tend to come out as lashing out or frustration or even now, when we are in a particularly sort of hot boxed environment where you're only in your space with your people around you, the people that you're with. I've been comparatively few times where it's come out of my wonderful fiance who I adore, and it has, but comparatively few, because I think the effect that singing and that meditation and that breath work does for me.
Well, you're able to respond rather than react, and it's just a simple thing. It's awareness, isn't it? You have an innate awareness when you regularly, because anytime you're singing, if singing is simply voice on breath, then anytime you're singing you have an awareness of your breath, and the more awareness you have, the more you're able to actually be a bit more tactile in how you respond to outside circumstances. So that it makes complete sense. And I think everyone should sing more.
I agree. It's just fun.
It is.
And the rest of it, all of these, there is simply not a bad thing about singing.
No.
And it unlocks something in people that didn't have it before, that makes them a flame that people want to moth flock to. It does. If you sing, people just go, if you've got that thing in you that you've built for yourself, even if you don't do it publicly, it gives you something that really makes you magical.
Yeah, it does. It definitely does. All right. So, final thoughts.
I've not put a room light on, but the lights are going. The light's going down. The sun's going down. The big skylight is going down.
The sun is going down. You have been drooped into darkness, and so the curtain is literally closing on this episode. But what final thoughts in terms of someone perhaps who, in the back of their mind, is one of those people, which I think secretly is everyone, that is like, oh, I'd love to have a crack at that, at singing, but is paralyzed by the idea at the same time. What advice would you give them?
Most singing teachers are really nice people. You don't sing unless you love singing, and singing itself makes you a nicer person. So most singing teachers, I would say, approach them if there's someone in your area, or if you find someone that you'd like to approach, and everyone is doing online lessons at the moment, myself included. Drop us a message, talk to us, and we can then talk you through what you specifically want from it, and then work out how best to do that. I'm always from the point of view that we go into a singing lesson to try and make things easier for you, not to make you better. It's not about that. You're great just as you are. It's about to make things easier for you, and you will be amazed at, when you get back to your nature, how quickly your body and you respond to that. It really is fantastic. And it is always, and this is such a cliche, actually, I'm like biting my hand thinking about how cheesy this is, but it is the first step that is the hardest. It really is, because once you've reached out to someone and said, hello, I'd love a singing lesson, you seconds later you've gone, oh damn, why did I do that? But you've done it, and then they'll message you back, invariably lovely, and you can talk it through. Right now, people are also often offering much cheaper lessons because it's about giving people an experience and just getting work for them. So support your local singing teachers.
Yeah.
And I will say that the MU standard is £20 an hour. So if a teacher chooses to teach for less than that, and I, as I say, have been giving a few free lessons because we've talked and they simply can't stretch to paying for them.
Yeah.
I'd rather give free than less than 20 because that's the industry standard. So do be aware it is a skill and it is something that is worth paying for, even if just once a month, just to open yourself up to it. There's no prescribed set way that you should go about it.
Yeah, and perhaps even the important point that don't sing to sound beautiful, sing because it's joyful.
Absolutely that. And any teacher worth their salt will come at it from that point of view.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, where can people find you, Bryony?
I am all over the internet. I am all over it.
I have sprawled myself across that net.
I have an unusual name, and it seems to be the only one of its kind online. So Bryony Purdue, that's BryonyPurdue. Find me online. I love singing. I love teaching. We've talked about it till the cows come home. Literally, the sun is setting. And I just love hearing from new people. It's really exciting to get new people because the first couple of lessons are always massively transformative. I've never had a pupil, whether coming from an acting or dancing background or someone who's never had a singing lesson in their life, I've never had someone come away not going, whoa, this is way quicker than I thought it would be, because they have it. You all have it. We all have it already. Just up to us together to get through to it. Oh, I've just lost your sound.
Yeah, amazing. Sorry. I muted myself because there was a bit of background noise and I didn't want your amazing voice not to be heard. But honestly, it's been such a pleasure to have you on the podcast, and I don't think there's a more relevant time to have an episode about singing and the joy of singing and the importance of singing. So thank you.
Completely agree. Georgie, thank you so much, and keep doing what you're doing. It's really, really important.
Thank you.